Hello, guys. I don't do this very often. I'm usually one to do all my reactions and my rants and discussions, usually live. However, this is kind of like a special thing where I don't believe live was the right choice. If you're new to my channel, my name's Beagle. I do a lot of live streams. I play a lot of games. I'm usually funny, enjoying myself, and laughing, ha 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 ha, all the fucking time. Not this time around. Lately, across my nation, the United States, and the world, there's been a lot of unfortunate shootings. You can tell by the title that it's going to be about guns. Now, I have a lot of people that I speak to on a regular basis who are from different parts of the world, right? When they see something like that happen here in the States in particular, the response is you need to ban all firearms. And that's a pretty common response. I say no to that. It's not really the guns that are the problem. It's the people that get the guns that become the problem. Now, I am a gun owner. I have multiple guns. Firearms, if you want to call them that, whichever, it doesn't matter to me. I'll use the terms interchangeably. But I respect my firearms. I clean them. I make sure never to put in any more ammunition into it than I plan on using. I primarily fire no more than 3 shots when I go hunting at any target. Because I am not someone who wants to just go out there, blow a whole bunch of ammunition, shoot holes into everything, and kill everything on sight. That's not the way I am. That's not the way I was raised. And a vast majority of us in the U.S. are raised that way. To not do that crazy, stupid shit. All right? There are a lot of us here in the States that will never have a gun in their presence. Ever. I grew up in a town of around like 1,600 people. One of my best friends back in the day, his parents never owned a weapon. Never owned a firearm at all. His first experience with one was here, at my house, where he unfortunately picked it up and pointed it directly at another friend of mine. I grabbed the barrel, I took it away from him, I said, nope, not doing that again. He didn't know any better. He didn't have respect for the tool of death. And that's what a firearm is. It is a tool to kill. I am against the idea of saying it's for defense. A shield is for defense. Clothing is for defense against, weather. Armor is a defense against sword, spear, halberd, whatever. A gun is not for defense. A gun is to kill. Humans from the dawn of our existence have always found ways to kill one another. I'm not condoning the killing, I'm merely stating a fact. From sticks and stones to unmanned drones. That's where we're sitting at. There was a shooting at Brown University just recently, and there was a mass shooting in Australia. Australia has super strict gun laws compared to the U.S. And if I remember the reading, it was like 15 killed. One person stood up and tackled the shooter, got shot in the process, but probably saved a shit ton of lives. Brown College, 2 died. I believe 8 or 9 were injured. And unfortunately here in the U.S., it is not the first time, and it won't be the last time, for a college campus or a school shooting. We had Charlie Kirk killed on a college campus. We've had current President Donald Trump being shot at on out in the open doing his rallies and whatnot. I am not for the banning of firearms, but I am definitely for more restrictions on them. And which is really hard to say because we have a great deal of restrictions as it is. But here in the U.S., it is based on what state you live in. Each state has their own restrictions, their own gun laws. And it's insane. We have some things that are national, if you are a felon, you can't own a firearm, but owning a firearm is different than not being able to have anything that fires a projectile. In Wisconsin, which is my state, felons cannot own a firearm. They cannot own a taser, brass knuckles, and certain types of knives. But they can get knives. They can use bows, crossbows, archery stuff. At one point in time, they could have a cannon. They just can't have explosives. But just because you're told you can't have explosives doesn't mean that stops you. We've had tons of people make bombs over the years. Even if there's a ban, it doesn't stop people who really want to do it. Now, when I was a kid, major thing happened, and it was called Columbine, right? Which is a very big, well-known mass shooting at a school. Columbine happened when there was actually a ban on weapons going on that was put in place by President Bill Clinton at the time. So even though there was a ban, it still happened. I'm not condoning it. Don't ever go down that road thinking I am. I am for restrictions. I am for going back to a time where I felt safe. Now, I can't speak for other states and what they have in all of their bylaws and restrictions, but I can talk about Wisconsin. And I do have some documents here, and I have some, Google AI facts that I can throw your way to kind of help those who don't understand what it's like to live in a place where firearms are not freely obtained, but obtained with not a great deal of hurdles, right? You can't just simply go down to your local Walmart and pick one up. There usually is a day process. There is an age limit. There are certain restrictions in my state specifically that you have to meet. Otherwise, you're disqualified. Doesn't mean you can't get one, just means you can't get one legally. That's the big difference. Even if you can't get a firearm legally, it doesn't mean you can't get one. Because you can do a sale person to person rather than licensed seller to somebody. All right? I want to make sure we have that distinction understood, that people are still going to be able to get firearms even if it's not through legal means. This is my opinion on this whole situation. I am for firearms, but I am for having better regulations of firearms. Okay? I am not for just going out and killing everybody. That's not what I'm for. I'm for having the right to go out and obtain your own food if you need to. I am for the right of saving someone's life by taking another's if you need to. There are some things that I do not agree with the current gun laws in my state. And I'll discuss those as we get to them. So just, if you've been here this long, please please subscribe. Understand that this is my opinion. I am not red. I am not blue. I am an independent. Okay? I am strictly an independent. So this is not political in any way, shape, or form. But I will be showing some things that tell some information from both the red and the blue. All right? So, in the state of Wisconsin, you actually have people that are prohibited from possessing firearms, right? Both state and federal law prohibit certain persons from possessing a firearm. Although substantial overlap exists with respect to who is prohibited from possessing a firearm, the categories of persons prohibited under state and federal law are not identical. If we were to get something made nationally, that would help our situation greatly. States have their own laws and regulations, and it varies state to state. And the concealed carry permit, which I'll discuss later, in my state may not be accepted in a neighboring state, which has been the case. It makes it really hard to get full regulation and control over firearms when none of the states are exactly the same. Disqualification based on criminal conduct. That's the major one that'll disqualify you from getting a firearm, at least in Wisconsin. The person has been convicted of a felony in this state. The person has been convicted of crimes elsewhere that would be a felony if committed in this state. The person has been adjudicated delinquent for an act that would be a felony if committed by an adult in this state. The person has been found not guilty of a felony in this state by reason of mental disease or defect. Yes, if you have a mental issue and you have to get put under, involuntary sanctioning, you can't own a firearm anymore until the court says otherwise. Person has been found not guilty of or not responsible for a crime elsewhere that would be a felony in this state by reason of insanity or mental disease, defect, or illness. Like Wisconsin law, federal law prohibits a person who has been convicted of a felony from possessing a firearm. In addition, federal law prohibits a person from possessing a firearm if any of the following applies. The person is a fugitive from justice, running from the law. You cannot get a firearm in my state. It becomes another issue for you. So you can't get one legally in my state. Doesn't mean you can't get one. It means you can't get one legally. A person has been convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. Disqualification due to orders regarding mental health or addiction. The person was involuntarily committed for mental illness, drug dependence, or alcohol dependence under a Chapter 1. That is where you are put into an institution for a while. The person was adjudicated incompetent by the court in a guardianship proceeding under Chapter 54. The person was ordered into protective placement or was receiving protective services when determined to be incompetent due to a developmental disability, degenerative brain disorder, or serious and persistent mental illness under Chapter 55. We have things in place for people who do have mental issues to where they cannot legally get a firearm. The majority of the mass murders, the school shootings, the ending of one's own life tend to be from people who are suffering from some form of mental issue, right? Be it depression, be it schizophrenia, be it bipolar, be it just this idea of having so much vitriol and hatred, right, against another group of people. The guns themselves are not the issue. It is the people that can get the guns that are the issue. And I can show you right here with this information, we have things in place, at least in my state, where it's not supposed to happen. That's proof that even if you have it set up, it's more than likely still going to happen. And I can show you the statistics that it has happened. And for the majority of my life, I have the statistics. And I don't like them. I don't. But that doesn't mean I want my right to have a weapon taken from me. And I'm not going Second Amendment, just my right to go out and hunt. Because that's what my guns are for. They are for hunting. They are for protecting the home if that need were to ever arise. But from where I live, it really doesn't. However, I did have a moment in time where I would have had to protect my life and the life of my family if they were around at that point. My neighbor's ex-husband tried to kill her with a .357 Magnum. He was a convicted felon. He still got a gun. He still tried to shoot her. The SWAT team was called in to deal with the problem. So even though it should never happen, where you would actually need it for some form of protection, that was an instance where it could have led to it. Right next door, less than, 150 feet away. There are instances where it could be that case, but you never say it's for home defense, because the chances of it happening are extremely slim. Not impossible, but slim. Now, back when I was a kid in the early 90s, President Bill Clinton signed two major pieces of gun control legislation into law: the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act of 1993 and the Public Safety and Recreational Firearms Use Protection Act of 94, commonly known as the Federal Assault Weapons Ban. To have an assault weapon in the United States, from what I know, speaking to a lot of individuals who are part of the military, by the way, you need to get usually specific permits and go through a little bit of licensing to get specific types of weapons. The majority of the weapons we have in the U.S. are not assault rifles. An assault rifle is deemed as a fully automatic weapon where you hold down the trigger and it fires constantly. We have a shit ton of semi-automatic weapons that fires as fast as you pull the trigger. Which, yes, that can be just as dangerous. We have a lot of paintballers out here. I don't know if you've ever seen people who fire paintball guns, but they can fire that stuff extremely quickly. The Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act of 93, signed into law November 30th, 1993, the Brady Bill established a national system of background checks for firearm purchasers. The law initially required a 5-day waiting period for handgun purchases from a federally licensed firearms dealer, during which local law enforcement conducted a background check. This is good form of legislation. This is good. It's not here anymore. The waiting period provision was challenged in court and later replaced in November 1998 by the National Instant Crime Background Check System. It performed instant background checks, which has prevented hundreds of thousands of illegal gun sales to prohibited persons such as convicted felons and domestic abusers. The unfortunate thing is sometimes this system doesn't always work because it is so fast. Having a 5-day waiting period is great. So if you're going through a huge mental crisis and you decide to get that gun, you got to wait 5 days before you can get it. Now you don't. But you can't just go anywhere. You got to go to a licensed dealer, unless you go to a family member or a friend, which is the sad thing is that they're not regulated that way. Since its implementation, the Brady Law has stopped over 500,000 illegal gun purchases, which is great, which is good. Say down here, illegal purchases. I don't know how many of the deaths in school shootings are through illegal purchases. If they are school shootings on K through 12 here in the U.S., the rifle itself, the pistol itself, is probably purchased through legal means. And someone who should never have gotten it got a hold of it. That ends up being the situation, in my opinion. The Federal Assault Weapons Ban of 94. Signed as a part of a larger Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 94, this law banned the manufacture, transfer, and importation of 19 specific military-style semi-automatic firearms and their copies, and large-capacity ammunition magazines holding more than 10 rounds. This was good. There's no reason to have that. I stated before, I do 3. When I go out deer hunting, I carry 3. Whether it's 3 in my pocket or 3 in my gun, I carry 3. I don't need more than this, that's for sure. The ban included a sunset clause that automatically expired after 10 years, meaning it ceased to be a law on September 13th, 2004. Congress did not renew it. 2004, that was the time of President Bush. And we all know what was going on in my nation during September 13th, 2004. That was 3 years after 9/11, basically. The ban applied only to weapons and magazines manufactured after the law's enactment, meaning items manufactured before that date were grandfathered in and remained legal to possess and sell. This stopped the creation of more military-style weapons. It stopped it. We had good regulation. Congress didn't renew it. Studies on the ban effectiveness have produced varying results, but some evidence suggests that during the decade it was in effect, mass shooting fatalities were less likely to occur compared to the periods before and after the ban's expiration. So it's not the firearms themselves. It is literally our legislation here in the U.S. We had it good for a long time. And unfortunately, individuals, whether they were blue or red, decided as a whole group not to keep it good. And that sucks. Total incidents by database. All this stuff can be found on Google, by the way. This is all through Google. Very easy to find. Just look up what you're looking for in your specific state. The total number of incidents reported across different databases depend on their specific criteria, such as whether they include all gunfire on school property or only incidences of injuries and deaths during school hours. This is the stuff that's going to suck. The K-12 school shooting database, which is an actual thing, defines a school shooting as a gun being brandished, fired, or a bullet hitting school property. Over 200 incidences in 2025 as of late December. Every town for gun safety tracks firearm discharges resulting in a person being killed or wounded. 141 incidences as of November 2025. This is just for the year of 2025, by the way. Education Week strictest definition: shootings with injuries or deaths on school property, buses during school hours and or events. 17 such school shootings in 2025 that resulted in casualties as of December 12th. 17 shootings that resulted in actual fatalities. CNN's analysis, cross-referencing multiple sources, has identified over 70 school shootings in the U.S. this year where at least one person was shot, excluding the shooter. That does not include people who have died. That just includes people who've been injured as well. No, I'm not condoning those actions. I'm giving you guys actual facts because some people just don't know the facts. If it is 200 instances of a gun being brandished, fired, or a bullet hitting school property, 200 in a single year, that is almost one every 2 days. Which is kind of crazy. In my personal opinion, it's crazy. It's because people lack the respect and the knowledge and the sanctity of life. And they do these crazy things because of criticism or clout or hatred and malice. They're the ones that ruin things like owning a firearm for someone like me who only uses it for 1 or 2 times a year. No, you go lay down. Zoom out a little bit here. Since Columbine shooting in April 1999, I was 9 years old. The number of subsequent school shootings depends heavily on the definition used. According to various databases and analyses, there have been between 400 and over 2,000 school shootings. That criteria is the exact same as before. It is brandished, fired, or a bullet hitting school and or school property, which is where you have nearly 2,000 and over 2,000 incidences. Over 1,100 incidences with 1 or more victims shot in K-12 school shooting database. So kids, literal kids, K-12, 1,100 incidences since 1999. So in almost 25 years, 1,100 cases in the nation. More than 420 shootings where students were present and exposed to the violence. 133 active shooter incidences where the perpetrator killed or wounded victims during a continuous episode of violence at K through 12 schools. 59 shootings with 4 or more people wounded or killed. It was used as a common definition of a mass shooting. Regardless of the specific number, sources agree that the frequency of school shootings has risen rapidly. Since 2018, firearms are now the leading cause of death among children and teens in the U.S. That is not an opinion, that is a fact. Now, the worst part of that is that sometimes it is self-induced. Sometimes it is induced because of negligence. Sometimes it is induced because of hatred due to bullying and other unfortunate circumstances. It's not the weapons themselves, it's the people that hold the weapons. It's the neglect and the suffrage that they personally are going through that lead to these things. So when people say over and over, you need to have a national ban on firearms, that'd be like saying you need to have a national ban on car crashes, a national ban on hammers, knives. It doesn't matter what it is. I've stated it before and I'll state it again. We started with sticks and stones and now we're flying drones. Humans have always found ways to kill each other. Unfortunately, United States, because we do have firearms, it's just one more on top of that massive list, which is something I had a conversation with someone earlier about it. And they live in a different part of the world where they don't really have firearms, or at least not firearms as freely as we do here in the States. And even in the States, we do have regulation, and we had really good regulation. It just never came back, and it's been continually changing. And even in my state, the state of Wisconsin, there's changes in our regulation, and I don't agree with it. And it makes it really hard to be a gun owner and be an advocate for having a firearm and teaching the respect that a firearm deserves, because it is an implement of death. It is a tool to kill something, designed for that exact purpose. And I fear my kid being killed at our school. When I was a kid, I actually, someone took my words and believed I was actually carrying a gun in my locker. I got to sit down with the local sheriff and the principal and explain to them that no, I said I wish I carried a gun, because I did walk from home, or from school to home, quite a lot. That's about 4.5 to 5 miles that I would walk home. And on those back roads, that's where all the drunks are driving. Those are the roads they're taking. People were hit on the roads to my house. My house used to sit between 2 taverns. Now I just have 1 tavern nearby. In town, we used to have, I think it was 3 taverns on the main drag. In a town of 1,500 people. Main street. The street you have to drive through to pass my town. 3 of them. All literally within crossing street distance of each other. Even though I was bullied for my last name, which is Beagle. My last name is Beagle. I was bullied for it. I was made fun of. I was mocked. I was shoved into lockers. I was treated so horribly. People acted as though I had no intelligence, that I was not worth a whole lot to them. They made fun of me because my father was an alcoholic and wasn't worth a whole lot to a lot of people. They made fun of me because I didn't have my mother in my life. And we all stated the phrase, God, I wish they would just fucking die. I wish I could kill them. But I never did, because I have enough understanding and wherewithal to not go down that fucking road. Unfortunately, these people who do these heinous atrocities do not have that. They do not have the empathy required to allow someone to live, even though they're different. So it's not the guns, people. It's the people. The people are the problem. Current Wisconsin gun laws as of late 2025. This is what's currently going on in my state. Concealed carry. I am not a fan of concealed carry. I do not believe in it. I think concealed carry is bullshit. Open carry is what I encourage. It's what I speak for. It's what I'm an advocate of. This I am not an advocate of. A Wisconsin concealed carry license is required for state residents to carry a concealed handgun in most public places. That's why I'm not okay with it. Right there. Concealed handgun in most public places. Applicants must be at least 21 years old and complete a firearms training course. Wisconsin honors valid concealed carry permits from any other state that conducts a background check comparable to its own. That means that if your background check is not up to Wisconsin standards, we will not accept your concealed carry. I am for this. Open carry. Open carry of a firearm is legal for individuals 18 or older who are not otherwise prohibited from possessing a firearm. Open carry means you can walk around your street with your gun, usually a pistol, in its holster out on the side of your belt or the side of your waist. People can see it. I know a lot of individuals who do the open carry openly, but they are completely all for the concealed carry, which I am not. I do not like the idea of a concealed carry. I would rather know if someone's packing heat or not. Especially because the people that I know that do it, I know that they would never end my life, but they would go out of their way to try to save mine. So I am for open carry, not for this. A federally licensed firearms dealer must conduct a background check via the Wisconsin Department of Justice for all handgun sales. Private sales and transfers between individuals do not require a background check or permit to purchase. I do not agree with this. I am not a person that agrees with this. I do not like private sale. I would rather the record be there. That way, if that gun is used in a harmful manner and someone loses a fucking life, you know who sold it to them. This I don't agree with. I've got a lot of firearms that have been done through this way before I was able to purchase firearms. I do not ever want to have this issue. I don't want my kids to ever do private sales. I am not okay for that. And I'm not okay with there is no mandatory waiting period for handgun purchases. I am not okay with that either. I say a 3-day minimum should be it. 3 days. Because if someone's going in to get a handgun and they are in a bad state, they are suffering depression, they are probably going to shoot them fucking selves. Give them 3 days to cool off and things might change. I am not okay with this law. See, I want regulation on my firearms. Not just for my safety, but for the safety of others, for the safety of my kid, for the safety of my father, for the safety of my grandparents, for the safety of other people's children. We should have a bit more restriction, especially in my state. This is a bad idea. Having this allows people to legally hide a weapon and they can walk into a store. They can legally hide a weapon and walk into a church. Are they supposed to? Nope. But with that concealed permit, they can legally walk around. They can walk around on a college campus, actually. If they have a concealed weapons permit, they can actually keep their weapon in the car, on the property. I don't agree with it. And a lot of people don't agree with me that I don't agree with it. In the state of Wisconsin, prohibited possessors. Certain individuals are prohibited from possessing firearms under state and federal law, including convicted felons, those with domestic abuse restraining orders or convictions, and individuals committed to a mental institution by a court order. Cannot get a firearm in my state. Firearms are generally prohibited in certain locations, including schools. Exceptions for specific programs or law enforcement. They are prohibited to be at schools. Doesn't mean it stops them. They are prohibited in police stations, prisons, and courthouses. They are prohibited in bars unless you have concealed carry, and I do not like that. That's what leads to death. Stupid legislation like that. Someone gets drunk, you get into a fight, someone ends up dying. Someone gets shot. That is not okay by me. Private property owners may also prohibit firearms on their premises. I do know some people who will not allow others to walk on their property if they are carrying a firearm on them or in their vehicle. Minimum age must be 18 years old to possess or transport a handgun. Federal law requires individuals to be 21 to purchase a handgun from a licensed dealer. So even if you're 18, you can't buy one until you're 21. So you have to be handed one down from a family member or a friend or something along those lines. This is for universities and colleges. Since it was Brown University that was hit, I figured this would be very nifty to talk about as well. Regulations differ from universities and colleges. Even in my own state, they differ on the university and the college. The University of Wisconsin system, which is the UW system, I graduated from the UW of Eau Claire for one of my degrees, prohibits carrying or possessing dangerous weapons on university lands or in buildings without written approval or for law enforcement. That does not count other colleges, technical schools, trade schools, and the like. This is just the UW system itself. However, licensed individuals can store a weapon in their vehicle while lawfully parked on a university parking lot. See, I don't like that. This is that concealed carry license. You can actually store your weapon in your car. When my dad was a kid, he talked about people actually having the gun rack in the back of their truck and their guns were on school property. The number of killings at that point in time were very low, at least mass shooting wise. That would not be the case these days, I don't believe. UW institutions can prohibit firearms in campus buildings by posting signage at entrances, but they generally cannot prohibit concealed carry on outdoor grounds or in vehicles. That means concealed carry, again, you can walk around on the campus grounds with your fucking firearm in your boot, on your hip, in its holster, in your pants, in your pocket. I do not agree with this. This right here, concealed carry, I don't agree with. We have enough people concealing weapons. They did it when they tried to kill Reagan. They did it when they killed Kirk. They did it when they did the shooting at Brown University. They did it when Trump was shot at. Concealing the weapon is the problem. A big problem. Proposed legislation to ban concealed carry on college campuses has not passed. This is the problem. Legislation. We need better restrictions. And I've been saying that for a while. It is not the guns. It is the regulations that we have involving the guns. That's the problem. And this is just my state. States vary very drastically by wording. Iowa has it so that a convicted felon cannot own anything that fires a projectile. That includes crossbows, that includes archery, includes tasers that fire the actual prongs. Wisconsin doesn't have that. We use firearms. Big, big difference in just a single word or a single description. Fires projectiles, firearms. Very big difference, and we need it to be a national thing to help prevent these atrocities. And I am all for that, even as a gun owner. I do not fear people in the red. I don't feel people in the blue trying to take my firearms away, because that's not what's going to happen. If we can get good legislation passed again, we could have the preventative things that we used to have, where mass shootings were way more rare than they currently are. Proposed legislation for my state. Several bills have been introduced and or are under consideration for the 2025 legislative session. Constitutional carry. I do not agree with this. Republican lawmakers have introduced bills that would allow individuals to carry a concealed weapon without a permit and label it as a constitutional carry. And it is to strengthen the right to bear arms. I don't agree with that. I don't like the concealed carry, but at least you have to have a permit. Otherwise, you'll be fined and you could be possibly jailed. Okay? If they remove that, it's even worse. Either you remove concealed carry completely or you keep it with a permit. This is a bad idea. This sets bad precedent, in my opinion. College campus restrictions. Democratic lawmakers have proposed legislation to prohibit concealed carry on public and private college campuses, aligning their laws with K-12 school restrictions. This I agree with. Prohibit it. Don't allow it. Don't allow concealed carry on public or private college campuses. This is a good idea. Wisconsin Democrats have reintroduced proposals that would expand background checks to include private sales and regulate ghost guns. This I do agree with. I do not like private sale. I really don't. As for the ghost guns, I can't say much about that. That's something entirely different that'll never be able to get regulated, unfortunately, no matter what happens. And just so you know, no, it is not because it is Democratic. That is just what the Wisconsin is. This, I am fine with them keeping. If they want to get rid of without a permit completely, then no. If they just want to keep can carry concealed weapon, yes. Just make the restrictions on that better. Republicans can do that. They are good at making laws. They are great at making laws when they get their heads out of their asses. Same with these fuckers. The Democrats are great at making laws and helping enforce the laws when they get their head out their asses. I am independent. I do not like either party, but I have to accept what both parties do. Okay? I'm not one or the other. The waiting period. A bill was introduced in July 2025 that would impose a 48-hour waiting period on all handgun transfers. This I kind of agree with. I would like it to be a 72-hour period, but 48 is better than none. This is a good thing, and I hope it fucking goes through. I hope it works. I really do. This is better than none. Office of Violence Prevention. Governor Tommy Evers signed an executive order in January 2025 to establish the Wisconsin Office of Violence Prevention and committed to including robust gun safety reform efforts in his 2025 to 2027 budget proposal. I hope something happens there. A lot of people don't like Evers, and that's perfectly fine. I understand if you don't like Governor Evers and what he's decided to do and what has been done. But if you are okay with them removing this right here, concealed weapon permit, and you can walk around on college campuses with it concealed and be legal, then you have a problem. Personal opinion. This is good legislation. Prohibit concealed carry. It should prohibit all firearm carry, in my opinion, not just concealed. But because concealed carry is allowed on campuses right now on open grounds, this is a great step forward. I can only hope that that type of legislation and restrictions do happen as a gun owner for the safety of people. I hope it does happen. In Wisconsin, it is generally a felony to possess a firearm on K-12 school grounds and a forfeiture violation to possess one within 1,000 feet of school grounds. This is good information. This is good stuff. You cannot be within 1,000 feet of school grounds with a firearm. Thank God. In some states, it's 500 feet. Sometimes it is 1,000 feet in a direct line. Other times it's 1,000 feet, 500 feet from the nearest school building, school property zone, school sidewalk. It very much changes based on what the wording actually is. But 1,000 feet is damn good. Both state and federal laws govern possessing firearms in K-12 school zones. Possessing a firearm on the grounds of a public, private, I can't say that fucking word, or tribal school, providing instruction for grades 1 through 12 is a class 1 felony. You instantly get a felony, and you can't own a fucking firearm again. Hooray. At least it's a bonus. Unfortunately, it doesn't stop what they do when they are on the grounds, but they'll never get another one if they survive. Possessing a firearm within 1,000 feet of a school grounds, but not on the grounds themselves, can result in a Class B forfeiture, which means they're going to give up certain rights or the weapon itself. They may lose their hunting privileges, yada yada yada. It varies on how close they were, I believe, in proximity. While concealed carry licenses holders can possess a firearm within a 1,000-foot school zone, this does not permit them to bring firearms onto school grounds or into school buildings. This is only for K through 12. And you say, like, it says school grounds. That is K through 12. That is not college campuses. People can walk around with a concealed carry on the campus grounds, just not in the buildings. I believe the colleges should be exactly like this. Transporting an unloaded encased firearm in a vehicle on school premises is allowed for school-sanctioned purposes or for picking up/dropping off passengers or property. What that means is if a parent has a gun, in its case, unloaded, and the ammunition is not in the case with the rifle or the pistol or what have you, it is completely okay. Because at that point in time, there is no immediate and imminent danger, is how it is viewed. I say if you're dropping your kid off at school, don't have a fucking firearm, period. Simply put, no school should ever allow a firearm to be there unless it is a school-sanctioned purpose, like demonstrations, like hunter's education. That is done at the school in my town of Augusta. Okay? Hunter's education is done at the school, or at least it was when I was a kid. There you could bring the firearm, but no ammunition, and you went through and you learned how a firearm works. You learned how to respect it. You learned how to treat it. You learned not to point it at anybody, point it at the ground, point it at the sky, how to clean it. You learned all these things. And you got to take that course at like 11 or 12 years old. So you weren't actually supposed to have a firearm until you were a little bit older and less chaotic. I don't know if that's still the case anymore, unfortunately. Possessing other dangerous weapons, excluding typical BB guns or starter pistols on school premises, is a Class A misdemeanor, with similar exceptions for school-sanctioned purposes, law enforcement, and vehicle transport. It is all in the legislation on how these things work. Now, this is why we need to have the legislation, and this is what's happened through the legislation. The long-term data, and I believe this is for Wisconsin, 1970 through 2022. Pretty damn big span of time. The Center for Homeland Defense and Security recorded 79 school-based incidences involving guns in Wisconsin between 1970 and 2022. This count includes any instance where a gun was brandished, fired, or a bullet hit a school property for any reason. That's what that does in just my state of Wisconsin. 79 in what? 52 years? So damn near 80 in 52 years. That's more than it should be, but way less than what you'd expect. Recent increase. The Wisconsin Office of Children's Mental Health noted that nearly 60% of the 27 shootings in the state between 1970 and 2022 occurred in the last 8 years of that period, indicating a significant increase in recent times. So 27 school shootings in the state between 1970 and 2022 occurred in the last 8 years. So a quarter of all the school shootings in a 50-year period happened between, 2014 and 2022? Yeah. We lost a lot of gun regulation and a lot of respect for these types of tools, and we lost a great deal of understanding that people are going to criticize you and make fun of you and make jokes about you, and you gotta have a slightly tough outer shell to deal with some of it. It's insane. One source noted 26 school shootings in Wisconsin occurred between 2021 and 2024, the past 3 years as of late 2024, which was more than the total number of the previous 50 years. So, in 3 years, it was 26 shootings. 2024 instances. As of December 2024, significant instances including the fatal shooting at an Abundant Life Christian school in Madison, which resulted in 3 deaths, 2 victims, and the shooter who died by suicide, and 6 others were injured. Earlier in the year, a student was fatally shot by police outside a middle school in Mount Horeb before entering the building. It's the people that have the guns. Everyone knows that if you want to end someone's life, a gun is one of the more efficient ways to do it because it takes the least amount of effort and you can do it at a distance. And that's all they know. That's all they understand for the most part, people that do these things. And those were kids, primarily doing it against other kids. This is what makes me kind of happy, though. This is some good stuff. Public opinion polling of late 2024 and early 2025 indicate that approximately 56% to 60% of Americans support stricter gun laws in general. That's good. That is a positive. That means that, yes, some of our gun laws are a little bit more lax than what we'd actually want. Support for specific reform measures such as universal background checks is much higher and often bipartisan. That means both red and blue. You want better background checks. That's not all we need. We need to have a more national understanding on what should be considered legal and illegal with use of firearms. It shouldn't be left up to the state all the time. It should be a big thing like it was when the ban was originally produced during Bill Clinton's administration back in the early 90s. A consistent majority of Americans support strengthening general firearms sale regulations. That is good. I am one of those people. I support strengthening the general firearms sale. I want more regulations on buying the firearm itself. In late 2024, 56% of U.S. adults supported stricter laws covering the sale of firearms in general, according to a Gallup poll. Data from early 2025 shows this figure at 60%, with 27% wanting laws kept as they are and 12% wanting them less strict. I don't want laws the way they are. I want it to be slightly more strict. Even though we have things in place that do help a great deal, we need to develop something better, right? One of the things in my state was the handgun thing. I really hope they do pass it where you need to have at least 48 hours. I would rather be 72, my personal opinion. But 48 is better than no waiting time for a handgun. Support levels tend to spike after high-profile mass shootings and then recede slightly, but the majority of opinion has remained in favor of stricter laws since around 2015. So, from 2014 to 2022, that is when the majority of school shootings happened in my state. That's when a quarter of the total shootings in 50 years happened, and it's been in favor of stricter laws nationally across the U.S. since 2015. Could that be because there's a fucking trend that over the last, 8 to 10 years, shit's been really fucked up in many ways? Yes. It's not the guns, people. It's the people. It's the stuff going on. Support for specific common sense gun safety measures consistently polls much higher, often exceeding 80% and drawing bipartisan agreement. That's both red and blue. Universal background checks, 88 to 92%. This measure enjoys broad bipartisan support, including from most gun owners. Yes, like me, I want better background checks. I do not want to have this idea of private sale. I'd like that to be gone. Red flag laws, extreme risk protection orders, 76 to 81. These laws allow temporary removal of firearms from individuals deemed a danger to themselves or others and have a majority support across parties. This is big. People that are suffering with severe depression, right? People that have been institutionalized, even for a psychiatric hold of 72 hours. People that have gone through a recent divorce, let's say, maybe you should have your weapons temporarily removed from you. It says temporarily, until you prove that you are cognizant to have them back. I agree with something similar to this. What this extreme risk protection orders, that's what would depend on what this actually turns into. And that's what kind of makes it really hard to say, yes, I'm all for that. I'm for the idea, but it's all about how it's written and whether or not I'm fully in consent for that, fully in support. Banning assault-style weapons, 52 to 61. A slim majority of the public favors a ban, though support is sharply divided along party lines. That's based on what you consider an assault-style weapon. Anything that is, let's say, military grade, like it used to be, that was banned during Bill Clinton's term, yes, all for that. I'm all for banning the 19 military-styled weapons, manufacturing, transfer, high capacity mags and all that stuff. I'm all for banning that again, completely. Let's fucking do it. Because that's the shit that should be gone. High banning capacity mags, yes, ban that shit. Support for this is also a slight majority overall, but slightly partisan. But highly partisan, so it's one over the other, 55 to 58. Requiring a license to purchase a firearm, 72%. Over half of gun owners and Republicans support this measure. I am all for needing a license to prove that you are capable of having a firearm. I'm cool with that. Doesn't mean you can't have one, because you can still have the right to bear your own arm. Just show that you have a license to carry a firearm. Not a concealed carry, but to carry. I'm all for that. Because that license can then be taken away. It becomes a privilege that people really wouldn't want to fuck up. Unless they're deranged. Which we know a lot of these mass shootings, people are deranged in some way, shape, or form. Requiring safe storage. 77%. Strong support exists for laws requiring gun owners to lock up their firearms when not in use. I'm all for that. I am not for the quick release stuff that you see on TikTok. People hit a drawer and a fucking pistol comes flying out or whatever. I am not for that crap. That is really dumb. The majority of the time, you will never need that situation. Right? Even when my neighbor was being basically bullied, terrorized, and shot at by her ex-husband, that would still not warrant me to ever have a quick release. Do I know where my weapon is? Yes. Can I easily access my weapon? Yes. You don't see it in the camera, but it's in the shot. You'll never see it. And I've stated that many times over, but it is in the shot. It's there. It is easily accessible to me. But you don't know where it's at. And that's fine. I don't have a quick release trigger. I don't have a button to push. I don't have some weird fancy pop up the arm of my couch and hey, I got my little Ruger pistol, or I got my Glock, my 38 special, right? No, I'm not for that. The big bottom line, right? Guns are not always the problem. It's the regulation that becomes the biggest issue. And we had good regulation back in the early 90s, even into the late 90s here in the U.S. However, that all vanished. And things started to go haywire. People really started to fight over the the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms. I understand people are going to have a different opinion than I will. And that's okay. I am free to discuss and completely open to discuss that stuff with people. I have people that are very much in support of more regulation, people that are very much in support of no regulation, really. I have friends that are both blue and friends that are both red. But both sides, I can speak to them openly about any topic. I can agree with them completely, and I can disagree with them completely, and we can still be friends at the end of the day. So if you have comments, and if you have thoughts, and if you agree with me, cool. If you don't, cool. You can put them down below, and we can actually have civil discourse. In the United States, I want to be able to have my weapon. I want to be able to have my firearm. But I want to make sure that there are more regulations to keep other people safe who do not want the firearms around them. I want the safety for them and the safety for my kids. in my state personally, I don't want concealed carry. I want open carry. That way I know who has actually got something, and that does deter people. Could they become the target? Yes, they definitely could. So could the grandma walking with her cane. She's an easy target because she's slow. She's weak. Could the kid become a target? Yeah, because then it's a hostage situation. It doesn't matter who the person is, whether they have a gun on their hip or not. Anyone's a target. But at least that's an open deterrent. That's why we have guards in banks with pistols on their hips. That's why we have cameras. They are deterrents. Doesn't mean it stops it. But that's it. Like, subscribe, check out my live streams, come visit, and I do these conversations openly on live stream as well. I just thought that maybe this time would keep her a little bit more private. You guys have a good one.